All right, today we're talking about something that affects every single one of us, the weather. But more specifically, we're going to get into why it feels like everything is getting so much more extreme. Let's get right into it. So, let's start with a question that sounds like a riddle, right? What could floods and droughts possibly have in common? I mean, one is way, way too much water, and the other is a painful, desperate lack of it. But you're about to see how these total opposites are really just two sides of the very same coin. So, before we can really connect those dots between floods and droughts, we have to start with the absolute basics. And for weather, it really all begins with precipitation. Yeah, we all know the usual suspects. A little rain, some snow, maybe sleet now and then. But look at what's on the far end of that spectrum. That hailstone, that's not just a weird weather day. That is a display of some serious, raw power. And believe it or not, that single chunk of ice tells us a much, much bigger story. Almost 2 pounds. Just let that sink in for a second. That's not weather. That's a projectile falling from the sky. It's the perfect example of the kind of incredible energy we're going to be talking about. So, how in the world does something like a 2 pound hailstone even form? Well, it all comes from this massive, planet wide system that you might remember from science class, the water cycle. We all learned about this as kids, but it's never been more important to really understand what's going on with it. The water cycle, or the hydrologic cycle if you want to get technical, it's basically the planet's circulatory system. It's constantly moving water all over the place, and that affects everything from our daily weather to our long-term climate. And it's actually a pretty simple but really powerful loop. So first, the sun's heat causes evaporation, right? It turns liquid water into a gas, water vapor. Then that vapor rises up, it cools down, and it forms clouds. That's condensation. And finally, when those clouds just can't hold any more moisture, boom, we get precipitation. Rain, snow, or yeah, even those giant hailstones. It's a powerful and, for a long time, a pretty predictable system. Okay, but here's the absolute crux of the issue. That ancient, reliable cycle we just talked about, it's being tampered with. It's getting an upgrade it never asked for and frankly doesn't need. This really says it all. The water cycle is getting stronger. But listen, a stronger water cycle is not a better one. Not at all. It just means it's more intense, it's more powerful, and you guessed it, it's more extreme. And this right here is the key to understanding everything. The absolute best way to picture what's happening is to think of our atmosphere as a giant sponge. A cool sponge can't hold a ton of water. But as you warm that sponge up, its capacity to soak up moisture just goes way, way up. So here's how that plays out step by step. First, greenhouse gases trap more heat, which warms up that big atmospheric sponge. Second, because it's warmer, that sponge can now soak up way more moisture from oceans, lakes, and the ground. And third, all that extra moisture and energy means that when that supersaturated sponge finally gets squeezed, there's just a whole lot more water to dump all at once. The whole engine is just running hotter and faster than ever before. So what's the result of this supercharged cycle? Well, it's not just bigger rainstorms. It's this strange paradox of extremes that, honestly, is becoming our new normal. Just take a look at these two scenes. On one side, you have these absolutely devastating floods. And on the other, you have the cracked, parched earth of a brutal drought. They look like they couldn't be more different. So how can the exact same cause lead to both of these outcomes? Well, it all comes back to our supercharged sponge. For the too much water side, it's pretty straightforward. That warmer atmospheric sponge is holding more water. So when it rains, it pours, leading to these massive, intense storms and floods. But that same heat has another effect. It also acts like a giant hairdryer on the ground, sucking moisture right onto the soil and plants. And that is what makes dry places even drier, kicking off these longer, more severe droughts. So you can think of a flood as a total system failure. The atmosphere just dumps way too much water, way too fast, and the ground below simply cannot keep up. All the natural and man-made plumbing gets completely overwhelmed. And a drought? Well, that's the other side of the coin. It's what happens when that superheated engine gets stuck in absorb mode over an area for too long. It just keeps pulling more and more moisture out of the land than it ever puts back in. So we've got this paradox, right? Either way too much water or way too little.
what does this actually mean for us on the ground? Because this isn't just some abstract science project. Knowing about this new reality is actually critical for staying safe. And that's really the key takeaway here. When we understand the why behind these crazy weather events, we can get a whole lot better at preparing for the what. This knowledge gives us the power to face these challenges, whether that means preparing for a flood or conserving water for a drought. And that preparation can be really, really practical, especially when it comes to floods. The advice here isn't just helpful, it's life-saving. The most important rule, the one you have to remember, is to never, ever enter floodwaters. If you see them, stop, turn around, go another way. It doesn't matter if you're in a car or on foot, the danger is real. Just stay away. And if you're near rising water, get to higher ground. It's simple advice that can save your life.
So there you have it. The ancient, fundamental cycle that governs water on Earth is being intensified. And it's creating a world of extremes, a world of devastating floods and crippling droughts, sometimes happening in the very same places. Which leaves us with a really important question to think about. The cycle is changing. Are we ready to change with it?